Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Welcome to another CFA Society New Zealand webinar. My name is Jeff Stengel. I'm Executive Director for the Society, and with us we have Kylie Goodwin, who is our Executive Manager for the Society, and has done a great job organizing today's session, and our speaker, Harvey Nguyen, and Abby De Beer, who I will introduce both in due course. But this is a great topic today for CFA charter holders and aspiring CFA charter holders, because I think, as you would all know, ethics is at the core of everything that we do and that we ascribe to as CFA charter holders. What distinguishes the CFA brand more than anything else is adherence to the highest ethical standards and moral behavior. So it's really fortunate that we have with us today Harvey, who will be presenting his paper, which, by the way, won the Best Paper Award at the New Zealand Finance Colloquium earlier this year, which is quite an accomplishment. Congratulations, Harvey, to you and your team. The title of Harvey's paper is, and I love the title, "Who Keeps Company with the Wolf Will Learn to Howl. Does political corruption affect financial advisor misconduct?" So again, this is the best paper, ARX paper at the New Zealand Finance Colloquium. I really, Harvey, look forward to hearing more about the results that you and your co-authors, Pham, also from Massey University, and Dao from RMIT and Lincoln University, and of course, the very renowned Professor Martin Young, also from Massey University. So I look forward to hearing what you have to say today. The Q&A will be conducted by none other than Abby De Beer. Abby is a longtime analyst with different roles across Treasury over the years, but currently is with Westpac Bank, where she is an executive to the COO for Westpac, doing a variety of really interesting things. But Abby will be conducting the Q&A. So with that, I think that's probably enough for me. So let me just welcome you again, Harvey. Thank you for your time today. And thanks again to all of you attending today, and enjoy your webinar. Harvey, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. Thanks for having me here. Thank the CFA Society New Zealand for having me here, and thanks everyone for joining me in this seminar. It's my great pleasure to present my work, which is a joint work with my co-authors, Pham, Untitled, and Martin Young. And as Jeff mentioned, we name it right. There's political corruptions affect the financial advisor misconduct. So to start with, let me start with a background of this paper. So the ideas for this research were initiated about 7 years ago, when I had the chance to look at this book written by Mark Epstein and Kurt Hansen. And that's a very interesting book. And one key takeaway from that book is over the last few decades, regardless of many attempts to stop or slow down corporate misconduct, but almost nothing has significantly stopped or slowed the corporate misconduct around the world. And I have a search for misconduct from the media mentions. I searched for media mentions of misconduct from the factual global news from 1990s to 2020s. And the figure, as you can see here, shows us the misconduct related news attracts increasing attention from the media in the recent decades. And if we look at, for example, in 2018, for example, the misconduct is mentioned in the media more than 38 times higher than that in 1990. So the more I look at misconduct, the more I'm aware that financial misconducts are significant threats to the efficiencies and the soundness of the financial markets, and it attracts increasing attention from both practitioners, lawmakers, and academia. And the price of misconduct is considerable, right? On average, firms lose about $4 for every dollar that it misleading inflates its market value buys. The large U.S. financial institutions paid more than 12 billions in fines for the period between 2013 to 2016, and the cost of misconduct go beyond the penalties or litigations and include various indirect costs, for example, job loss, career destroy, use, or stop by temper. So the price is considerable. And when I look at different records of the misconduct, I found no country is immune from misconduct. In New Zealand, for example, we are very proud to live in New Zealand with one of the most transparent countries in the world. Having said that, misconduct is not uncommon in New Zealand, and financial market authorities has warned an individual financial advisor for his misleading or deceptive conduct in 2016. So misconduct continues, and the long-term declines in misconduct is not documented yet. So research studying driving force behind financial misconduct is significant interest, and that is our motivations to conduct this study. And financial misconduct is a very broad term, and as a finance scholar, we mostly interested in misconduct in financial plannings and transaction service. And our focus on the financial misconducts is reasonable because of a couple of reasons. The majorities of individual investor, seek advice from financial advisors for investment-related choice. About 50% or half of Canadian households concerns finance advisors, and about 700 billions in retail investment assets are associated with advice account. In the US, for example, majorities of Americans' household relies on financial advisors, servicing over 70 billions, $7 trillion dollars, which is 4 times higher than the total assets of all commercial banks in the US. So that's why, financial advisors have a huge influence on the household or investor choice, investment choice, and portfolio performance. And the misconduct, conducted by financial advisor is common. In the US, for example, 1 in 3 advisors, or about 1 in 13 advisors, or about 7% in the US, are having the misconduct record in their career. And the numbers of financial misconduct has increased in recent years. And when searching for the driving force of misconduct, a couple of inspiring quotes came to my mind. One of them is from Lincoln Stephens, who suggests that the individual is not so much to blame, even the worst individuals, as the system of corruptions which have grown up about us and reward the honest men with mere livings and the group with all the magnificence of our magnificent model life. And from Henry Jones, if the society normalize indecencies, and then indecencies will be the norm. So these inspiring quotes and the other evidence, tend to suggest that culture seems to be the root of misconduct. So in this study, we consider whether local cultures or surrounding environments contribute to affect the likelihood and the magnitude of financial misconduct. And cultures or local culture is also a broad terms, And in this particular study, we focus on the political corruptions. And the reasons why we focus on political corruptions is one of the global priorities now, according to World Bank Enterprise analyst surveys, about 1/5 of global firms experience at least one prior request from their public officials. The global fraud surveys in 2016 that interviewed the senior managers of the firm, and they all suggest that combating corruption is a global priority. And there's also a number of externalities of political corruptions. For example, it affects the economic growth, it affects investment efficiencies, about it also affect the bank lending activities, the firm value, the reporting quality, so on and so forth. So political corruption is one of global priorities, and that's why we focus on one particular aspect of culture, which is political corruptions. And in terms of when we consider the possible relations between political corruptions and misconduct, there's mixed implications that we can follow from both empirical and anecdotal evidence. So we follow a mixed implications with regards to these possible relations. For example, the behavior consistent theory suggests that individuals tend to follow their normal norms as it will increase the social recognitions and reduce the cost of social discredit. With regards to that, theories and practical implications, it suggests a positive relations between political corruptions and financial advisor misconduct. On the other hand, financial advisory service are highly regulated industries, and the financial advisors are required to pass the rules or ethics focus exam, and one part of the CFA exam also focus on the ethic. So people may argue that the market and legal disciplines and the comprehensive trainings may reduce or attenuate the effects of unethical environments on employee behaviors, which suggests a negative relations between political corruptions and financial advisor misconduct. Last but not least, the large variations in demographics are less informative in understanding different levels of misconduct among the seemingly identified neighborhood. There's couples of studies and also evidence that people these among the neighborhoods, they exhibit different levels of misconduct and wrongdoing. So this strand of literature suggests that there's local corruptions and financial misconduct might be irrelevant. So mixed implications from the prior studies and also from existing literature, which suggests that the relations between political corruptions and financial misconduct is empirical questions, and that urge our comprehensive studies on this particular topic. And now if we move to the research, we need the data, we need the samples, and we are very lucky to have very comprehensive and solid data from financial advisor misconduct, where we can obtain. This include more than 600 financial advisors, and that enable us to identify their locations of employment, their backgrounds, their genders, and also their misconduct records. And we obtain this data from the US, SEC, Securities and Exchange Commissions. And in terms of definitions of financial misconduct from the data that we can obtain, they include criminals, regulatory or internal investigations, and also the custom event that were resolved against the advisor. The next set of data that we are able to obtain is the measure for corruptions, It's a broad concept, so at hand it cannot be captured by a single metric. So for the corruption measures, we based on the numbers of political corruptions convictions that collected from the annual reports to the Congress by the Department of Justice. And each year we construct a political related corruption measures as the total numbers of corruptions related convictions in each state as reported in the US Department of Justice. And we argue that the higher numbers of political corruptions convictions is deemed to have a culture of corruptions that should impact both individual advisors and the firms operating in that step. So the total numbers of conviction case is a good process or reliable process for the actual levels of political corruptions. And we obtain the other data that we obtain the couples of state level macroeconomics from the US labor statistics. Our final sample include about 2.7 million advisor year of observations and coverings about 700 unique advisors. So a very large and solid data that allow us to conduct a comprehensive study to see where the local cultures affect misconduct. And our sample spanning from 2007, the first year that the data become available, and that ends in 2015 when due to the availabilities of the data that we can obtain. Here comes the figures, right, that shows the average numbers of financial advisors across the state. And as you can see, right, California and Texas are the two states that have the highest numbers of advisor misconduct. And the Texas have the highest average numbers of convictions, on average 99 convictions per year. Florida, which ranked third across state based on the numbers of advisor misconduct, is deemed to be corruption prone, and the average numbers of financial misconduct across the US state is around 6,000 cases. This figure, right, provides the average numbers of corruption-related conviction case across the US state. And in general, right, one key takeaway from that is the state with high numbers of corruption-related convictions tend to exhibit higher incidence of financial advisor misconduct. However, right, when we comes to the empirical analysis, right, we need to use some econometrics technique. So here, right, we use the linear probability models to investigate the likelihood and the magnitudes, right, of financial advisor misconduct. So we use a simple model with controls for the individual advisor characteristic. For example, their experience, their genders, their qualifications, and we also account for the state macroeconomic factors that may affect the likelihood of wrongdoing for individual advisors. And for a comprehensive investigations of the potential impacts of local cultures and financial misconduct, we consider both individual level analysis and the firm level analysis. Thanks to a rich data set where we can have access to the individual record of finance advisor in the US. And that allows to conduct both individual analysis and the firm level analysis. So here comes our main findings and results, right? We found that, right, local cultures play a significant role in shaping finance advisor misconduct behavior. And it's not just about the statistical significance, but also the economic meaning. So one key takeaway from this figure is economic significance of this impact. So we found that one standard deviations increase in the political corruption convictions results in about 8% increase in the likelihood of financial advisor misconduct. And 8% is significant and also a very considerable number. And we consider the analysis at both firm levels and individual levels to make sure that, right, the results are robust. Corruptions have several dimensions and hence cannot be captured by a single metric. We consider the alternative measures of corruption cultures, which is corruption reflection index. So the way that the author construct this index for each year, right, they use the numbers of news story that mention the term corruption, fraud, bribes, and other deviations, and divided by number of pitch mentioned, politics and influence. So the higher values of the corruption reflection index, the more corruption prone the local cultures, and we use the CRI as alternative measures of corruption cultures in addition with the political convictions case that we used in the previous analysis. And here comes our results. We found that, right, when the corruption reflection index are employed as a measure of corruption culture, we still document that the local cultures play a significant role in shaping financial advisor misconduct. We then consider the effects of the provisions, and in particular the Dodd-Frank whistleblower provisions, which provides, so the provisions reward the whistleblower who provide the SECs the information and help them to identify possible fraud wrongdoings. These provisions reward these whistleblowers with financial bodies, and the whistleblowing and the whistleblowers may contribute to detect the financial fraud and also increase the expected cost of fraud and corruptions. So we consider how the passage of the provisions in 2011 affect the associations between the local corruptions and financial misconduct. Well, we found that, right, the provisions play a significant role in reducing the financial misconducts after the passage of the provisions, where it can be, illustrated by the negative coefficients between political corruptions and the provisions. We further investigate the effects of the provisions on the advisor misconducts after accountings for the local corruption. The local corruption perceptions can affect the enforcement of the laws with lower tolerance of wrongdoings, may exacerbate the impacts of whistleblowing. So it's not just about the cultures, but also the levels of tolerance of wrongdoings, right, in the countries or in the societies where they have lower tolerance of wrongdoings, right? These impacts, right, of the provisions may be more pronounced, and we use the export whistleblowing tip as a process for the local tolerance for corruptions. And we found that the results are more pronounced, right, among the high corruption tolerance counties. We conduct a couple of additional analysis, right? But the key takeaway from that is our results are robust, and we document a robust and significant effects of local cultures on the magnitudes and the likelihood of misconduct among the financial advisors. So to sum up, right, the likelihood of misconduct is basically a function of the costs and the benefits of financial misconduct. And in this particular study, we consider whether local cultures and in particular political corruptions affect the likelihood and the magnitudes of misconduct in financial advisory industry. And we found that the advisor and the firms that operate in the state with high political corruptions tend to commit more financial misconduct. And the corruption cultures play a significant role in shaping individuals' unethical behavior. We also found that, right, the provisions play significant roles in reducing the misconduct. And our findings suggest the externalities of corruption cultures on individual ethics and the essential roles of the laws in reducing the corruption-prone norms or cultures. So that is at the end of my presentations and my study. So any questions or comments are warmly welcome.
Cool. Thanks very much for that, Harvey. That was a very informative discussion and assessment of kind of your findings of the last few months or few years. Just to reiterate from Harvey, open for questions now. So there is a Q&A function on Zoom if you want to drop a comment in there, and I'll happily read those out. And again, just it's always going to hold a lot more value when it's a collaborative thing. So I really encourage you to ask any questions you might have for Harvey. I will kick it off whilst we get the Q&A function going. My question, Harvey, was great research. Just kind of wanting to get your gauge on how much do you think the increase in kind of the financial advisor misconduct seen is actually due to the greater global connectivity and reporting, as opposed to the underlying misconduct behavior of politics?
Yes, very interesting questions, so from what we have from our study, so the misconduct is on the rise, and in terms of the financial misconduct around the world, it is getting increasing attentions from both the academia and practitioners. And in terms of the political corruptions, political corruption has been there for a while. It's not recently. It's went back several centuries ago. And in terms of the magnitude and the frequencies, and according to the corruption index that we document and we collect, right? We found that the corruption cultures tend to follow an increasing trend recently, and that's why the governments around the world they tend to take the actions, right, to try to stop or slow down this misconduct. So very interesting questions, and the short answer is yep, the misconduct is on the rise, and also for the corruptions, political corruptions is not new. It has been there for a while, and no countries is immune from political corruptions.
Thanks for that. So good answer. Just one of the questions dropped down. Just kind of clarity on one of the earlier charts that it seems corruption has been dropping over the last couple of years. I might just get some clarity on that one.
Yes, I think that's a good point. From the basically for the graph that we have, that based on the data that we can obtain, we found that in terms of the number of corruption convictions, it increased. In particular for the US, it tend to decrease in the recent years. But here we are talking about the global trends. I think the questions from the Harvey talk about the global trends, and it is still on the rise over the last 2 decades. So that is a bigger picture. And for the US in particular, yes, right. Over the last 2 years, the numbers of convictions decrease. Totally agree with that.
Okay, so the thematic picture is more so the increase. Cool. Thanks for that. Another question dropped down. How to relate misconduct and financial centers in terms of which states might be more prone, and is it worrying that Wall Street is migrating to Florida, which typically has a high corruption index? Thoughts on that?
That's an excellent questions, right? Whether the Wall Street or the SECs or the other regulators take that into account when it comes to the state with high corruption index. That interesting questions. Yes, that's probably one thing that the regulator may take that into considerations. But before we consider research, we conduct comprehensive, literature's review, and we found a couple of mixed implications, right? One may argue that, right, when if the governments, right, among the industry, for example, the financial advisor, are heavily regulated, right, then the misconduct should, reduce or tend to follow a decreasing chance over time. But it seems not very clear, or it's not very true in practice. So you have one suggestion from Michael that, right, the SECs or the Wall Street may take that into considerations about, how to consider the state with high corruption index. But one interesting things that we found from my study is when, the misconduct is, detected, and then these advisors, they can, somehow find a new job in the same industry within the same state. So that's quite interesting that, when the misconduct is detected, right, and then, after the punishment and a considerable portions of financial misconduct is still, find new jobs in the same state. So that's something that need considerations. So that's why we think that, the root for financial misconduct, lies in their cultures. If, the yes, one of the quote that I have, if the societies normalize indecencies, and then indecencies will be the norm. So very interesting questions. Thanks, Michael, and thank Mark for these questions.